What? You seriously suppose you can set yourself up against a whole people? All Moscow was burnt down, you know, by a penny candle, answered Bazarov. Indeed. First comes an almost satanic pride, then cynical jeers, so that is what attracts the young, what takes by storm the inexperienced hearts of boys. Here is one of them sitting beside you, ready to worship the ground beneath your feet. Look at him. Arkady turned aside and frowned, and this plague has already spread far and wide. I am told that in Rome our artists don't even enter the Vatican. Raphael they regard as a fool, because, of course, he is an authority, and these artists are themselves disgustingly sterile and weak, men whose imagination can soar no higher than girls at a fountain, and even the girls are abominably drawn. They are fine fellows in your view, I suppose? To my mind, retorted Bazarov, Raphael isn't worth a brass farthing, and they're no better than he. Bravo, bravo. Listen, Arkady, that is how modern young men should express themselves. And if you come to think of it, they're bound to follow you. Formerly young men had to study. If they didn't want to be called fools they had to work hard whether they liked it or not. But now they need only say everything in the world is rubbish. And the trick is done. Young men are delighted. And, to be sure, they were only sheep before, but now they have suddenly turned into nihilists. You have departed from your praiseworthy sense of personal dignity, remarked Bazarov phlegmatically, while Arkady had turned hot all over and his eyes were flashing. Our argument has gone too far. Better cut it short, I think. I shall be quite ready to agree with you, he added, getting up, when you can show me a single institution in our present mode of life, in the family or in society, which does not call for complete and ruthless destruction. I can show you millions of such institutions. Cried Pavel Petrovitch, millions. Well, take the commune, for instance. A cold smile distorted Bazarov's lips. Well, you had better talk to your brother about the commune. I should think he has seen by now what the commune is like in reality, its mutual guarantees, its sobriety and such like. Well, the family, The family as it exists among our peasants, cried Pavel Petrovitch. On that subject, too, I think it will be better for you not to enter into too much detail. You know how the head of the family chooses his daughters-in-law? Take my advice, Pavel Petrovitch, allow yourself a day or two to think it all over, you'll hardly find anything straight away. Go through the various classes of our society and examine them carefully, meanwhile Arkady and I will. We'll go on abusing everything, broke in Pavel Petrovitch. No, we will go on dissecting frogs. Come, Arkady, goodbye for the present, gentlemen. The two friends walked off. The brothers were left alone and at first only looked at each other. So that, began Pavel Petrovitch, that is our modern youth. Those young men are our heirs. Our heirs, repeated Nikolai Petrovitch with a weary smile. He had been sitting as if on thorns throughout the argument, and only from time to time cast a sad furtive glance at Arkady. Do you know what I was reminded of, brother? I once quarreled with our mother, she shouted and wouldn't listen to me. At last I said to her, of course you can't understand me, we belong to two different generations. She was terribly offended, but I thought, it can't be helped, a bitter pill, but she has to swallow it. So now our turn has come, and our successors can tell us, you don't belong to our generation, swallow your pill. You are much too generous and modest, replied Pavel Petrovitch. I'm convinced, on the contrary, that you and I are far more in the right than these young gentlemen, although perhaps we express ourselves in more old-fashioned language, vilely, and are not so insolently conceited, in the airs these young people give themselves. You ask one. Would you like white wine or red? It is my custom to prefer red, he answers in a deep voice and with a face as solemn as if the whole world were looking at him that moment. Do you want any more tea? Asked Fenishka, putting her head in at the door. She had not wanted to come into the drawing room while the noisy dispute was going on. No, you can tell them to take away the samovar, answered Nikolai Petrovitch, and he got up to meet her. Pavel Petrovitch said bonsoir to him abruptly, and went to his own study. Chapter 11. Half an hour later Nikolai Petrovich went into the garden to his favorite arbor. He was filled with melancholy thoughts. For the first time he saw clearly the distance separating him from his son, and he foresaw that it would grow wider every day. So they were spent in vain, those winters in Petersburg, when sometimes he had pored for whole days on end over the latest books. In vain had he listened to the talk of the young men, and rejoiced when he succeeded in slipping a few of his own words into heated discussions. My brother says we are right, he thought, and laying aside all vanity, it even seems to me that they are further from the truth than we are, though all the same I feel they have something behind them which we lack, some superiority over us. Is it youth? No, it can't only be that. Their superiority may be that they show fewer traces of the slave owner than we do. Nikolai Petrovich's head sank despondently, and he passed his hand over his face. But to renounce poetry, to have no feeling for art, for nature. And he looked round, as though trying to understand how it was possible to have no feeling for nature. It was already evening, the sun was hidden behind a small clump of aspens which grew about a quarter of a mile from the garden, its shadow stretched indefinitely across the motionless fields,